So today we're talking about cloud storage and how to secure it and why some organizations are leaving gaps in that security. Let's talk about why you have a problem, right? Just like AWS, Azure, and GCP, Google Drive, OneDrive, SharePoint, Dropbox, all of these cloud storage services house tons of data, right? And the main problem is that everybody knows because public Amazon S3 buckets are leaked, Azure blobs are leaked. They're paying way less attention to these other providers, and they need to be secured. And that's because there's a ton of data in there, and especially sensitive data, HR records, right? Sales records, customer information, um, intellectual property. The list kind of goes on, and all of this is living in these cloud storage drives that are not being properly secured. They don't have the same practices applied to them. Another huge issue, we'll talk about this, is public access, right? They can easily be marked as publicly accessible. That's another huge security risk as well. And of course, even outside of an accident, maybe if somebody were to accidentally set a file to publicly accessible, that's one thing, right? But attackers know that there's a ton of data in there. Prices per records are high and they're trying to steal it. And so there's often not a lot of monitoring on these platforms. So here are the main targets, right? SharePoint, Google Drive, OneDrive are the top targets that we find with our threat laboratory and who those attackers are really going after in particular. They're also the top sources for data breaches as well. So why you actually need to classify this data, and this is super important because if you don't know where your sensitive data is, you don't know where the keys to the kingdom are, you can actually even begin to actually apply any real security to it, right? And the reality is that employees are going to dump whatever they want into the shared drives. Again, going back to its sales info, HR info, right? You need to be able to know what employees are doing. Is this certain drive chock full of sensitive info? Or is everybody following the rules on this one? This is only marketing assets that are approved for public exposure. Those are the things that you need to know. And if you have no idea, that is a huge gap that you need to fill as soon as possible. So, public accessibility, right? And we have a separate presentation on this, but oftentimes these are the risks are the same. So you see in the headlines all the time, AWS, public Amazon S3 bucket, tons of sensitive info that's been leaked, right? Same with Azure, same with other storage services within AWS, but you don't see a lot of attention on these other cloud storage services, right? Especially Google Drive. It makes it extremely easy for an employee to set it to anyone with the link, and these links are being constantly scraped by attackers, right? And similar stories with SharePoint, right? So you need to understand what this public access is. You need to understand exactly when an employee has made a risky decision, has made a sensitive file publicly accessible, so that you can get on top of that and make sure that that no attacker immediately finds that file and downloads it. So let's talk about some common attacks, right? There's a couple of them here. We'll talk about some OAuth abuse, right? And this is super common. It starts with a pretty run-of-the-mill phishing attack, right? And so once an employee sees this link, they log in with their user and password, and they click allow. That actually grants the app permission to mess with their cloud files, right? And so from that, the end state here is that the attacker is able to exfiltrate the victim's data through API calls directly from the provider services, right? So they can bypass MFA in this way. They can stay pretty persistent and they can keep doing it until they are detected. And oftentimes they can go for a pretty long time because companies aren't applying the same amount of monitoring to these cloud storage platforms. It's talking about ransomware is another similar attack, right? So an attacker, maybe a piece of malware, piece of ransomware, could be a Trojan, but the ransomware will actually start to encrypt, for example, OneDrive synced files, right? And so what will happen is on that local machine, files will be encrypted. It will mirror those changes up into the cloud, and then you all of a sudden have a potentially massive attack that's been kicked off by maybe just even one local machine within your organization. Let's talk about man in the cloud, right? Another one where it starts with a foothold on the local machine. Traditional malware, like I said, it could be a Trojan, whatever that might be. But the point here and what they're able to do is that they are to find an OAuth sync token. They're able to plug that in to their own sync client, and they're able to siphon the data from the cloud directory, again, bypassing login protocols, MFA protocols, whatever that might be. So the solution, right? We have a couple problems. You have public access everywhere. Employees are setting it all the time, and it's only a matter of time before an employee, if you're not monitoring it, clicks a button and releases something that absolutely should not be public under any circumstances, right? So you should look at some of the default sharing settings, right? You should look at disabling anyone with the link globally. But more likely, what you need to do is you need to figure out, okay, what is actually going on, because there are legitimate cases for anyone with the link. That's why the settings exists. But you need to figure out when an anyone with the link permission is actually granted. Another one, and I've talked about this a lot, is the data classification. You need to know where sensitive data is, so that when somebody asks you, "Hey, where's our sensitive data?" you can have an answer for them across Google Drive, AWS, Azure, SharePoint, OneDrive, whatever you're using. You absolutely need to know where that data is and where that risk is, and if not, uh, you can't even begin to start to secure that data. And then the final one is actually monitoring for activity, right? So there are plenty of attacks. It's certainly less common than with AWS and Azure, but there's penetration testing tools out there that go after OneDrive and G Drive and SharePoint, right? Attackers know that there is a ton of data and sensitive data, and you need an autonomous way to actually monitor that. Because if you're not, you're just leaving all of that data open for the taking. And that brings us to a little bit more about all of this protection, right? So we have a tool, it's called Data Defender. You need to apply your data security across all of them. That's what it does, right? It gives you that data security across AWS, Azure, GCP, and all of the platforms that I talked about at length today: Google Drive, OneDrive, SharePoint. It's able to detect that sensitive data. It lets you know the moment something becomes publicly accessible. But most importantly, it's able to detect and stop these very complicated or even very simple, but very quick attacks against your data in real time. So try it out today. It takes about 15 minutes to get installed. And thank you all for listening.